When should the first rookie running back go off the board in the Fantasy Pros Championship? Are FFPC drafters underestimating the seismic change in one NFC North backfield? And are there concerns with one AFC East offense that are not being talked about enough? Plus, former FPC League champion Kurt Anderson is going to join us to discuss the right spot to draft Devontae Williams, which Commanders running back to select in your Fantasy Pros and FFPC drafts, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Pressure, I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture, are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics and Farelliacs. Welcome into the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, my co-host. I will introduce in just a second. He is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Ladies and gentlemen, you can win $1 million. I should do the Dr. Evil thing. $1 million in the Fantasy Pros Championship at just a $350 entry fee right now at myffpc.com. If you register by June 1st and draft by June 15th, you will get a free bonus FFPC league credit added to your myffpc.com profile. If you want to do that up to 3 times, you'll get up to 3 credits. That's over $100 in free FFPC leagues. Remember that you can also register for Dynasty Startup Drafts now at myffpc.com as well. You get into 365-day FFPC fantasy football team management at the $100 level. You can go all the way up to the $5,000 level as of right now as well. Remember, we've been doing Dynasty Fantasy Football for nearly a decade. We have well over 1,200 leagues, could be over 1,300 by my count, and Dizzle's in the chat right now. Maybe he can clarify on that. We might be over 1,300 leagues. The point of it is, not a single league has ever folded. Not a single league has ever, we've ever lost it. Like if you have been in an FFPC Dynasty League, it's been the same Dynasty League from the get-go. So that is what is great about playing 365 days a year with the FFPC. You don't have to worry about your Dynasty Leagues folding. Not only can you win a $1 million grand prize in the Fantasy Pros Championship, you could also win another $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event. As you are aware from the FFPC email that went out earlier this morning from yours truly, you are running out of time to enter the 2023 FFPC Pros versus Joes drawing. Only 19 days left to be a part of that. Remember, people ask me this all the time for years and years. How do I get to be a Joe? How do I get to be the Joe in the FFPC Pros versus Joes? Well, here's what you do. You put down a deposit or you buy your team or teams for the FFPC main event by the early bird deadline, which is the end of this month, and then you will be entered into that Pros versus Joes drawing. And what that means is if you are selected, you are going to be put in a league with 6 pros and 5 other Joes. There's only going to be 7 of these leagues available, and the winner of each league will get a free FFPC 2024 main event entry where you can compete for $1 million. Plus, you get to compete against the best voices, scribes, analysts in the industry too, which is always fun. And we broadcast all those live FFPC Pros versus Joes drafts right here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. You can also win, in addition to the $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event, plunk down $125 and turn it into $200,000 with the FFPC Best Ball Tournament as well. You don't want to play in standard best ball, or maybe $125 is too much for you? I got the answer for you. $35 will get you in to the FFPC Superflex Best Ball Tournament, where you could play in that format for a $50,000 grand prize. That's all at myffpc.com. And if you're watching this show for the first time, you've never played in the FFPC before, that's cool. We can cater to you. You can go to myffpc.com and sign up for a best ball league, a classic league, whatever you want, for just $5. If you have $5, you got a link it on you, we have a fantasy football draft for you as well. Remember to like this video, subscribe to youtube.com/FFPC Fantasy. comment on this video, share the video with your friends and enemies, and of course, get notified anytime we go live on this FFPC channel. We are going live this Sunday night, I think is the next time we go live, with best ball coverage, best ball tournament coverage featuring Aiden LaCorey and Dave Terpoli. That is Sunday night, and if you want to register to be in that league that they're broadcasting, you can check out twitter.com/FFPC. They have the link right on there. You can sign up. There's only a couple of spots left. So if you want Terp and Aiden to rip your team apart, that is the place to do it. myffpc.com. Sign up for that best ball tournament going off Sunday night, and you can watch yourself. You could probably even be part of the show on Sunday night too, if you want to chime in and give your thoughts on the picks that you are making and why Terp and Aiden are totally right in their analysis of your team or totally wrong. It is totally up to you. The gist of it is go to myffpc.com and sign up for all the great best ball main event Fantasy Pros drafts we have going on this weekend. Let's bring him in. I've been bear baiting, as my old high school history professor said, way too long. He is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. He is the incomparable Farrell Elliott. Farrell, welcome in. Happy Friday night to you, man.
Hello, buddy. How are you?
I am loving life. I'm excited for this week. We have the NFL draft behind us.
Yes.
We have basically all of free agency behind us, give or take. And now we are in the thick of drafting season. And now we get to see where the high stakes players, players like Kurt Anderson, who's going to be coming up here in just a few minutes, how they are setting the ADP. We already saw Genesis and Revelations, how they set the ADP last week. Now we're in the thick of it. And now we get to start seeing how the high stakes players are handling all these rookies and obviously the free agents and the veterans that are already signed, how they are affected by the NFL draft. It's a wonderful time. I always say this, it's always a wonderful time to be a fantasy football fan, but this time of year for sure, it's a great time to be a fantasy football fan, as well as being a KFFSC player at KFFSC.com as well.
I appreciate that, Balky. And in the marketing you sent out, the language here, 19 days to get entered into Pros versus Joes. I'm afraid with language like that people are going to accuse you of spending too much time in Kentucky. That seems like something I would write, but that's neither here nor there. I think we've got some interesting veterans who have yet to find a home. They're going to find one soon after June 1st. So, yes, free agency is over, but we've got a lot to look forward to in what might happen with guys that with Fournette, Elliott, Kareem Hunt, our old pal Kareem Hunt, a lot of guys
Still out there. You are right. And that is going to change the ADP of not only those guys, but obviously some of the players that they will be joining as real life teammates here in the NFL. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to pontificate on how to attack the Baltimore passing offense in your drafts, as well as which Giants wide receiver to target. And then FPC league champ Kurt Anderson is going to dish on the Bears backfield, Cortland Sutton's ADP, and much more. Let's get into it tonight. We'll get to as much as we can. The first thing I want to kick things off with is some of these draft picks that are signing right now, and to get your instant reaction on this, Farrell. Quentin Johnston is now signed by the Los Angeles Chargers. It's a 4-year deal according to NFL.com. He is probably going to play on the outside with Mike Williams operating the other perimeter spot with Keenan Allen in the slot in the Chargers offense this year. This is a great opportunity for Johnston. I don't necessarily know in 2023, but 2024 with the big cap numbers for Williams and Allen, I really like Johnston. I was telling the Dizzle about this earlier last week. I like Johnston for 2024. Can he offer any kind of value to fantasy owners in 2023?
Oh, yeah. This is one of those teams that drafted what I consider the missing piece. When you watch the Chargers play, it seems like they have everything in place. Everett does better as a tight end or well enough at that position. He can contribute when needed. But this is the missing piece. They always seem, especially when they get banged up a little bit, to have to turn to the smaller receivers. And Palmer is a good receiver with this team too. But when you look at the measurements on Quentin, you see what you typically think is a Charger oversized wide receiver. We've been dealing with a lot of them for years. Every one of them looks the same on the roster, but really no one looks like Quentin Johnston. This guy – what's the old prehistoric bird, Balky? What's that called?
Pterodactyl?
Pterodactyl. This guy looks like a pterodactyl. Who in the hell wants to tackle a pterodactyl?
No one.
You don't see anybody like this. He's got an unusual build. He makes people miss. I just think he's obviously he was their best wide receiver. I think this is the guy they wanted. People should look at film against Kansas, against Oklahoma State late in the season, against Michigan when he averaged 27 yards a catch. This is a phenomenal ball player, and big numbers are in store for him this year. Without he's not going to pirate the other receivers. I think he's just going to make them better. Keenan Allen can get 7-8 receptions a game now without having to be targeted 16 times.
The thing that I drafted Quentin Johnson in at least one dynasty. I think just one actually. Now that I think of it, so far I got another one kicking off tomorrow. I'm Dizzle is kind of down on him a little bit, which kind of like brought me down. I wouldn't say significantly, but enough where I was kind of like, okay, maybe this guy's in the slam dunk that I think he is. But I do like him. I do like him for dynasty this year. Yeah, I think you can get away with, because Josh Palmer is still on that team. And so I don't know exactly the impact that Johnson's going to have this year. So he's more of a let somebody else take him and redraft. But for dynasty, I'm still in on him. And I want
you to draft him and redraft when you get to Kentucky, because if the Dizzle thinks it, then a lot of smart people are thinking it. And I'm not necessarily going to say they're going to be wrong. But I think by the time we get to double-digit weeks, this is the kind of player that could be your missing piece as you try to go and win. And so I want you to draft this player, Balky.
Farrell, I guarantee you this: with as many leagues as I'll probably be drafting at the KFFSC this year, he will be on multiple teams for me. I have no doubt. Another guy I'd like to get on multiple teams, I just don't know if it's going to fall that way, is Bijan Robinson. He was signed by the Atlanta Falcons, 4 years, $22 million. Bijan Robinson will have the 5th-year fully guaranteed team option. Now, Robinson will be 24 years old when the Falcons have to decide whether or not they're going to exercise that option. I want to more so talk about 2023 Bijan Robinson. Arthur Smith, his new head coach, called him, quote, more than a running back. We're talking about using him in the slot there, or Arthur Smith is talking about using him in a slot there. And this is a guy that should be phenomenal. Farrell, in redraft, FFPC, KFFSC, what have you. I think I might have asked you this before, and I apologize if I did. How high is too high for Bijan Robinson in redraft leagues?
I don't think you can go too high with this player. And it's because of what Arthur Smith says. He's more than a running back, but he's a running back first. Now, what I've noticed in the dynasty drafts that I've been involved with is Algiers or Allgaier, depending on how you pronounce it. The correct one is Algiers, right?
I think it's Algier.
Yeah. We have a business that advertises in Louisville, Kentucky, spelled the same way. Allgaier. They advertise every 15 minutes, so we don't know how to pronounce it. So anyway, okay. The matter at hand. The Falcons ran slightly over 1,000 offensive snaps last year. No coaching staff called more running plays than the Atlanta Falcons. They ran the ball 51% of the time, giving them over 500 runs. So when we talk about Tyler Algier, we talk about a player that rushed for over 1,000 yards behind what is the best aspect of this team, the offensive line. Didn't start like that at the end of the year, but they came into shape. Matthews, Lindstrom is the guard, and McCary, yeah, he's probably one of the most underrated players in the league. So what you've got this player moving into is a place that loves to run the ball behind an offensive line that can really clear away for him. And run blocking is all about attitude, and these guys have got it. And then you get in a situation where they've got a quarterback that's a short passing game and an accurate quarterback. We're kind of behind this quarterback, and now I'm behind him more because in that short passing game, now he has Pitts, now he has Drake London, and now he has Robinson. So, and people will point at Robinson and say, well, he didn't catch the ball much at Texas. Doesn't matter. He didn't have to. They didn't want him to. Doesn't mean he can't catch the ball. The Atlanta Falcons are going to be a very interesting offensive team. They're going to keep the ball. They're going to have long, sustained drives, and they will probably be better in the red zone. There you are, Mr. Pitts. If you love your tight end, there he is. They're going to be better in the red zone, And I would take a look at them defensively as well, because in the fourth quarter, if this offense runs the way it's supposed to, the Falcons' defense in the fourth quarter is not going to be gassed. They're going to be ready to play football. So I like the way the Falcons are going, and it's all based upon the rushing game. Here's something from Biplab. But where the hell has Biplab been? Hi, Biplab.
Yeah, Biplab Mandel, former guest of the show, chiming in. He's saying they think they need to get rid of Arthur Smith. And by the way, that's not an unpopular opinion among FFPC and KFFSC players.
Well, I got news for you guys. Arthur is there for a mighty long time.
Yeah. I don't see. That's the thing, is I don't see him going anywhere. Sigmund Bloom brought this up on a recent Football Guys podcast. When's the last time a team had 3 consecutive top 10 picks and used them all on skill position players?
Yeah,
Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and now Bijan Robinson. You got to believe that all they need is a quarterback, right, Farrell?
Well, and they may have one, because you don't need these guys to do a whole lot of things to be successful, because of what they're designed to do, they're doing it very, very well.
I want to get to our guest here, Kurt Anderson, the former FPC league champion. Before we get to him, the last thing I want to bring up is and I'll say this: last night, if you were watching the FFPC social media channels, you saw the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. It was myself and Farrell, one of your buddies, a UK guy, Scott Connor. He co-hosted with me for the second hour, but the first hour was Thor Nystrom from Fantasy Pros, a guy who not only is a fan of the Vikings, but obviously covers the Vikings as well. And we talked a lot about this Vikings backfield, and Diana Rossini's report is backing up what Thor Nystrom has been saying for like the last month plus. Quote, all signs point to the Vikings parting ways with Dalvin Cook. In fact, Nystrom said last night, 3 weeks from last night, which would make it, I believe, June 1st. Dalvin Cook was going to be released by the Minnesota Vikings. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, who is the new GM for the Vikings, not new, I think he was there last year as well, but he was not committing on Dalvin Cook being a part of the Minnesota Vikings this year. This was a few weeks before the draft. Now, we've heard a lot of rumors about him being traded. We heard it to Miami. We heard about him being cut. However, he has not been done so yet, or he has not been cut or traded yet. If the Vikings were going to trade him, you'd probably think it was going to happen before the draft. That didn't happen. Now they could release him. If the release happens after June 1st, the Vikings are going to save $9 million against the cap, $8.2 million dead cap hit spread over not only this season, but the next season as well. Alexander Mattison signed that 2-year deal in free agency. So he's going to be there through next year, if they keep him through next year, but he's going to be there this year. They also drafted DeWayne McBride, a guy that Thor Nystrom liked, and Mel Kiper Jr. was a big fan of DeWayne McBride. In fact, I think leading up to the NFL draft, probably about 2 or 3 weeks before, Kiper had McBride as his number 3 running back in the class. They got him in the 7th round. Nystrom said that McBride cannot catch, don't expect him to catch, but he thinks he is already the best first and second down banger on this team. Guy just refuses to go down. He's a bully between the tackles, something that they're lacking with both Alexander Mattison and Ty Chandler. Your thoughts on how to handle this Vikings backfield in Fantasy Pros? Alexander Madison's going in the mid-8th round right now, Farrell, but the other guys, McBride and Chandler and everybody else, you can get them basically from the mid-16th round on. They're basically free. How do you handle the Vikings backfield? And I'll throw Dalvin Cook into this conversation as well.
Before the exhaustion of the dynasty drafts, Balky, I hope you've given a wonderful synopsis of this, and I hope that you've talked about McBride on the other shows and last week, because he's a really good football player, and those guys have been around a long time. You have to pay attention to when they take a player from this type of school, and from this type of school against those type of opponents, he's rushing for 200 yards, 200 yards a game. I again disagree with people saying he's not going to catch the ball, because who knows? I don't think Madison is the guy. I think Madison is a good complementary player. I think that the running back that's going to carry the ball equally in a committee or be the top ball carrier for the Vikings this year is, as of today, not on the roster. So as you make your choice, I think keep that in mind. And
what about Farrell? Is there? Well, I know there's a non-zero chance. What if the Bengals decide to release Joe Mixon? Vikings release Dalvin Cook and they bring on Mixon. Is that a possibility for you?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I don't know what their complaint is with Cook. I've yet to try to figure this out. To me, is he injury prone? Is he not good in the building? Is he just too much damn money? That's the way that this league is evolving with the running back position. You just want to get away from spending money. So maybe it's a pure financial move. You feel like you can pick up players with gas in the tank. We talked about Elliott. We talked about Kareem Hunt. You can pick up the guys that can do the job for a lot less money, allowing you to make your team better all the way around. So it looks like a deal. If it is financial, it looks like a deal could have been made. Sometimes you have to take a step back in the negotiation world. Look, I guess we'll know more about the story soon, but to assume that Madison or even the rookie McBride is going to be the proverbial bell cow running back for this team, or at least in a two-man split, I don't think we can assume that.
It's aggressive. It's an aggressive call. By the way, Bill Hollywood saying that it is a money thing with Dalvin Cook. The Dizzle chiming in too, saying that Dalvin Cook's cap hit is too high, and the Vikings are up against the cap per usual. That's his thoughts on this as well.
Yeah,
now, yes,
Dizzle's right.
We do have a question from the chat about the Jacksonville Jaguars' newest veteran receiver. I'm going to hold that question, Dave Nowitzki. I see it. We're going to get to it, but I want to bring in our guest first, and I want to get his thoughts on it as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring him in right now. He's been playing high-stakes fantasy football since 2002. He's an OG. He was playing with the WCOP, drafting out in Las Vegas more than 20 years ago. He's an expert in the FPC and a longtime FFPC main event player, and is a self-proclaimed data geek. Yeah, that's right. Buckle up, everybody. We're going to get some numbers tonight, and it's going to help you be a better fantasy player. Please welcome in former FFPC and FPC league winner, Mr. Kurt Anderson. Kurt, welcome into the program, man.
There he is.
Eric, Farrell, good to see you guys.
Hi,
It's good to see you, too. So right off the bat, you're wearing a Seahawks shirt.
Let's go Hawks.
All right. Okay. So, I was going to softball you on the first question. I'm not anymore. Let's talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba, the guy who went 20th overall to Seattle. He signs the 4-year contract with the 5th-year option this past week. So, Kurt, when you look at the Seattle offense, let's talk about it from a redraft standpoint. How big of an impact is JSN going to have this year? And I'll preface this with this, Kurt. You already know because you've been drafting in the Fantasy Pros Championship. But Smith-Njigba, wide receiver 31 at that 6-7 turn. Is he going to return that type of value this year?
Yeah, I think that's behind Metcalf and ahead of Lockett, if I'm not mistaken, or at least that's what I'm seeing, which is a bit shocking.
Right.
Who will he help? He'll be a good asset, but I think he's going to help everybody else. Just having him on the field as a slot guy. The Hawks have been looking for a slot guy for a long time. David Moore days. So it's a good pickup. I don't read too much into it. It's a rookie. Learn the playbook. If he produces, great, but I can't invest that in.
Kurt, who are some of the other guys that they tried to fit into that slot? I remember more. It's a long list of.
I remember.
The Seahawks receivers have never been a household name bunch, even from. Can you name 2 from their Super Bowl team? I think everybody might be able to name 1.
Was Doug Baldwin one?
Yep.
Was he on it? Okay,
yep.
So I remember him. Didn't he play the slot too for Seattle?
Hey, he was an outside guy. He was more the X, and Curse the Y. I think was the Yeah, exactly.
They've always had a smallish receiver try to play in that position. Now you get a player that's 3 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier than Lockett, and I think you're spot on. I think this is exactly what's going to happen. He's going to improve the game for everyone, and Seahawks have got him this is a 3-headed monster at receiver. It's going to be very impressive. Geno Smith just he's a cat with 9 lives, baby. Life keeps getting better for him all the time.
Yeah, Dizzle is already chiming in on the YouTube chat right now. He seems cheap as quarterback 14, given the wide receiver capital that you have in Seattle and the wide receiver capital that is being paid by Fantasy Pros and FFPC drafters with Metcalf and Lockett and Smith and Jigba. I mean, like you said, Kurt, Lockett is going the latest on all those guys at wide receiver 34. You get 3 Seattle wide receivers off the board by the mid-7th round, which is it's crazy, and you got to be loving life if you have Geno Smith in any dynasty leagues or redraft leagues. Yes, like I do. All right, let's move on. Kurt, I want to ask you before we get into the meat of the interview, what are you doing for a living when you're not winning these FPC leagues?
I buy jet fuel for the world's largest jet charter operator.
Oh, well, this is a first, Farrell.
Yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of good things to see, which keeps me into data, which gives me the chance to play with data in fantasy sports.
Very good. Another numbers guy with one of the greatest romance musicals posters hanging on the wall back there over your right shoulder. That's the first you've seen that.
Is that Moulin Rouge? What is that? La La Land?
Yeah,
Moulin Rouge.
Eyes,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Comes to a great. Okay. Well, listen. Let's get back to football. Every time that I'm in a draft, I have to pick up a newspaper or look online to see that Javonte Williams is in Denver and is not dead. But however, he just keeps dropping and dropping and dropping. And I want to just say, look, everybody, it's a lower body injury that's going to heal. And he's a very good running back. Are you drafting him at, Balky says, like 804, fourth pick of the 8th round, ADP? Yep. Are you drafting him? What's your thoughts on this player?
Well, my drafting religion is I really don't deal with the ACL guys. I've just been there so many times, and I'm pretty much the heck with it now. And it's just too soon. And of course, it sounds like he's had the worst known ACL injury known to man. Each news report we get, it just gets worse on how devastating Javonte's injury was. All that being said, 8.4 depends on your build. I've got a team. Ironically, I took him at 8.5 in the Fantasy Pros, and I mean literally 8.5. But that team, if I'm not mistaken, it's kind of your Mixon Cook segue. I think I went no wide receivers. You got to play a little bit when you're doing this, right? And I literally think I went no wide receivers. That's so against the grain. But you got to play.
When you look at the no ACL guys, does it matter if you have a player 25 or younger that has an ACL? Does that matter or no?
Timing usually matters. The August, Septembers, the J.K. Dobbins injury from 2020 summer. We thought he'd be ready in 2021, and he just wasn't. But so it's got to be an early injury for me. It's like thinking Beckham would be back last year. No chance. The guy tore his ACL, 9-10 months prior to this, our season ending in fantasy. So I'm not even on my radar. I don't even play the game. If I lose to it, more power to the player who just beat the odds with his ACL. Adrian Peterson, about the only major example.
And you're a numbers guy. You would know about those odds.
Yeah, but I'm done looking at the numbers, to be honest. Right. We all got the same deck of cards.
By the way, Dizzle coming in with the Johnny Carson rim shot here. Is Tyjae Spears considered a no ACL guy since he literally does not have an ACL? But Ching. We love Dizzle coming through tonight. He's
on fire, baby.
He used to be the co-host of the show, Farrell, but now he's sort of the band leader, which I love it. It's a role he embraces.
He's from the home office, so to speak. He's
from the home office. Okay, so Javonte Williams, and I'm just looking at this. I want to bring this up. And by the way, anytime we cite ADP data on this show, it's all courtesy of Darren Armani, fantasymojo.com, at FantasyMojo on Twitter, the godfather of the Pros versus Joes challenge. That's where we get all our ADP data. Javonte Williams, I'm looking since the Fantasy Pros Championship opened up in mid-March. He was going as high as the late 3rd round. He has fallen quite a bit. He has dipped down all the way to round 12 in some drafts, Kurt, and he has settled in right now over the last 7 days on average, the 804. I think you said you got him at the 805, so kind of on brand there. He's going right behind James Cook, or not on brand, but on par. James Cook, Alexander Madison, Zach Charbonnet going right ahead of him. Khalil Herbert, Devin Achane, and A.J. Dillon going right behind him. Speaking of A.J. Dillon, the Packers are going to look a lot different this year, boasting the youngest wide receiver core in the NFL. I portend that this is the youngest wide receiver core in NFL history. I have no stats to back that up, but I can't think of a younger one. And the tight end room also looking very young. The grizzled veterans on this team, it's the backfield. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon behind Jordan Love. Is Dillon going to have his best season ever, given that this guy is, as I believe, the second most tenured playmaker on this Packers offense, Kurt Anderson?
I think he's the best athlete by structure. I mean, everything you want in a running back. I've been looking for a running back like him since Earl Campbell. I mean, he's that guy. Whether it be a Koye. I mean, over the years, there's been a handful of guys. All-stop Bam Morris. I can't think of a few off the top of my head, but big guys who could lead a fantasy team. There's not many, and I think we all want Dillon to be that guy, whether you're a Packer fan or not. We need that big bowling running back. Bettis, not a fan, but Bettis was one of those guys too. It's good for the football to have a guy like Dillon, and if he can beat his 2021 numbers. I think he was a better player in 2021. He had more targets, I think, last year. I haven't looked at the stats in a while.
No, you're right. That's 100% correct. Yes.
And produced less catches with Aaron Rodgers. So that's confusing in its own right. So I like him. Love to have him in a heavy wide receiver build early draft. It's all depends on how your team is set up to start with, I think, is when you're drafting him.
I always think of, as long as we're talking about big, bullish running backs, go back to San Diego with Marion Butts and Natron.
Oh, yeah.
To draft those guys, too. Back in the day.
Means.
I want to go to, let's go to the YouTube chat right now. The Dizzle coming in, a couple of Jordan Love Hail Marys southwest of Lambeau Field right now. Regarding Packers tight end, speaking of Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, does it not concern FFPC drafters that the Packers have not sent a significant amount of targets to tight ends for more than a decade, which he is right. He is accurate on this. I have some thoughts, but Kurt, I'll let you talk about this. I don't know if you've taken Musgrave or Tucker Kraft in any of your Fantasy Pros drafts after the NFL draft, but just your thoughts on the Green Bay Packers tight ends.
No, there's just not enough. I mean, obviously, a young quarterback's going to lean on his tight end, but it's just not an offense that I'm going to lean on, and therefore I'm not going to lean on a tight end with that history, who hasn't had a tight end since Chimera. I know I'm missing somebody. Who was it? Bubba
well, there's
Franks,
there is Jermichael. Well, okay. Oh,
Jermichael Finley. Yeah.
So there's Jermichael Finley, who was going to be a stud. Then he had the neck injury, and just Franks Franks was a Pro Bowl tight end, but he went there based on catching literally everything in the end zone one year. I don't have my figures in front of me, but I believe he had 127 touchdowns one year that put him into the Pro Bowl. That's what he did. He was never a real serious tight end threat. But you're right. I mean, Finley and Franks, it's been pretty much that. It goes back to, like you said, Mark Chimera and Keith Jackson in the Super Bowl years in the mid '90s.
Wow.
And it's frustrating because this Musgrave kid is a special talent, and that we'd like to see him get to utilize those talents. One of the Dave jumps in, Nowitzki jumps in and says, "Yeah, look at Pitts. There's special talents at the position that never realize that potential." I've got to look at 2023 with a bit of pale over my drafting philosophy. This will be. I just won't get to draft J.D. McKissick in the 19th or 20th round this year, and I'm
Chris Rodriguez is out there, Farrell.
Terribly disturbed about this. So that leaves us two Washington Commander running backs. Kurt, could you weigh in? Is it Robinson? Is it the other guy? What's the other guy's name? Is it Robinson?
Antonio Gibson. Yeah.
Antonio.
Yeah.
Another injury situation.
I think it's both.
Are you going to come in with who are you? What are you going to do? I guess we know.
Yeah, I think it's both, and I'm going to stay clear. If I had to choose, I'd take Gibson. If Robinson could be a 3-down back, he'd be on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
If we know Gibson could be a 3-down back, but we know he's a 3rd down back, so that's the only reason he'd get my attention. I don't think they're going to dump on him. I firmly believe running backs, any position. I call it the May job fair, the draft. It's the NFL job fair. And some teams have openings, and you
Yeah.
know, if a team needs a running back, Seattle, prime example, the overthought on Charbonnet, Seahawks had two guys in their running back room. Their job fair said, I need a running back. Well, that doesn't mean they have draft capital. That means their budget and their job fair says they're taking a running back. So I don't read much into draft capital and that such. And I think Gibson can lead that team. I could be wrong. It could be Robinson. Like them both.
Well, ironically enough, these guys are going back to back in the Fantasy Pros ADP over the last week. Brian Robinson, running back 39, Antonio Gibson, running back 40. They're going at the 909, and then for Robinson, and then Gibson at the 1002 in ADP right now. So they're going back to back as far as running backs go. Let's talk about, I want to move on and talk a little bit of receivers here. Kurt Anderson, former FPC league champ, joining us on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Anthony Richardson, the new quarterback in Indianapolis. How do you think this positively or negatively affects Michael Pittman in 2023? Michael Pittman, by the way, a wide receiver who is going currently in the Fantasy Pros Championship at wide receiver 27. He has fallen to the 602, gone as high as the early 5th round in the last week, but he is basically an early 6th round pick. 26 receivers going on average ahead of him. Kurt, your thoughts on how Anthony Richardson is going to affect Pittman's numbers this year?
Well, they're skewed. I think the highest Pittman's probably gone is 4.1. You'll see that was me back early March. Trigger problem in the draft room. Had Pittman somewhere on my mind, and I would take him. I looked at the list again, and I took him over. I forget the list, but 4.1. And I knew I wouldn't come back at that turn to me. And my thoughts on Pittman, tied to Richardson, are they found somebody with a heartbeat and a pulse. It's going to be an improvement over last year. And they actually got a guy with some talent, and Pittman's going to be the number one. And I feed on number ones more than number twos. So that was that logic in that. So yeah, it can only make Pittman, in my eyes, the guy we thought he might have been last year. The recency bias has got us though, and he's going to fall. And it was my first draft. It was the 32nd draft. That's what it was. 32nd draft. Trigger faux pas. That's why you got to get in a lot of leagues and don't do the 30 seconds. Don't do the 30 seconds if you're drinking in March.
I like Pittman. I think the quarterback
can
stand on him, and it works. I think you'll come back to that and be happy with you.
Jay Reed Farrell chiming in on the YouTube chat right now, saying that I'm supposed to tell you that Pittman will have a quote regression. Former guest.
Oh yeah. He's that. I got to look up what. Where the hell is our Ivy League professor?
Yeah, Hudson Kern Reed. He's probably
words
teaching.
that I cannot define.
Yeah,
I got regression on you. And so he can regress from 98 catches and go to 95. He's still going to outdo a lot of runners. Okay, here's a place where I would have to agree that I just want to take a pass on, and I really, really like the player drafted to the Denver Broncos, the receiver Marvin Mims. I like him a great deal. I'm not anywhere near sold on what Denver, how long a leash that the quarterback is going to have at Denver. And the signing of Stidham makes me think that leash could be a little short. And it's just a complicated situation with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and now Mims comes in. How are you working through these Denver Bronco receivers? And do you see Cortland Sutton ever returning to the promise that he showed early in his career?
Yeah, I sure hope so. Again, he's one of those guys who's like A.J. Dillon, who's got the mold of what you want in a wide receiver. He's put up some numbers that we all like in fantasy. Last year's Denver, recency bias is going to be huge this offseason. I think the entire locker room is on a short leash.
What about? Yeah, that's a good point. What about the injury? He missed most of, was it 2020?
2019 or 20. It's been. I think that's not even an issue.
No,
in my eyes. Yeah, no, that's so far. So, yeah, when was that? That's
I think it was 20 because he had 2 years where he had 20 targets, good catches, close to maybe 5 or 6 touchdowns a year, And, I think maybe in the last, take away the injury year, but you take the last 2 years, you could be hurt. You could be hard pressed to find more than 3 or 4 touchdowns there. I think stat wise, it's just he's got a long way to come back, in my thought. And if it was how much of the quarterback plays into that recency bias? What do you think he's going to look like, the quarterback this year?
I think it's well, the quarterback I think is going to be fine. He's playing for his job, and whether that's Russell Wilson or Stidham, they're both playing for their job and their future, and that's who I want slinging the ball. If I don't have a top quarterback, I'm not going to go out and draft Russell and Stidham, but for my receivers, I want guys whose life's on the line chucking the ball. I don't want a content Ryan Fitzpatrick chucking them the ball. So in that context, over a lot of teams, I'll give it the Washington, the Atlanta problems. I'll go with the Denver's defense offense 6 weeks a year in that division for sure, chucking the ball 60 times a game versus 65 times a game running plays, versus an Atlanta offense running 50, 55 plays.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a good point. We're talking with Kurt Anderson, former FPC league winner, here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. Jacoby Myers has now signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. Devontae Adams, the target hog, is still there. Jimmy Garoppolo is licking his chops with all these great options he has to throw to. Hunter Renfrow, how much is he going to be affected, especially by this Jacoby Myers signing, when you look at it, Kurt?
Probably none. He's probably more affected by the Waller going away than another body coming in the wide receiver room. Again, it's the job fair. They needed a wide receiver. They identified the people who were available, and they signed the guy who actually knew the playbook, and that just adds up to a normal business decision. And he'll be on the field every play, and they'll all get there. I don't think it'll affect, to answer the question, none. Waller's leaving will affect the distribution between Jacoby and the right fielder for the Brewers.
It's exactly not anymore. Now he's with the Angels.
He got traded
this offseason.
I've been drafting too much.
That's a great Kurt. I love the reference. That's a great reference. Hunter Renfrow, wide receiver 89 at the 18-11. Is this a guy you're scooping up in all your Fantasy Pros drafts late?
I don't think I may have him once. I don't know. I don't look at like I said, I'm done looking at the numbers. It's all fun. It's I think I got him once. I'll just answer it like that. I'd take him more. Yes, I would. You bet. If I needed, I don't need wide receivers late. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
Here's a Raider question. We talked about some tight ends that we don't think are going to get it done. This one, I like what the Raiders did with the tight end out of Notre Dame. Meyer, what's your thoughts on this tight end?
Yeah, good draft pick. I mean, the future's bright. You won't see me in a redraft touch. I don't think I touched Pitts. I'll put it that way. And I was high on him, but I just don't. Too long doing this. I read too much into it takes too much to pick up the game. It takes too much to learn the tight end position. I'm done reaching for rookie tight end.
He went to Notre Dame, and Dizzle will attest that's one of the finest institutions of learning in the whole country.
So did Rick Meyer, and that didn't work out too well.
And Rocket Ishmael. Don't forget about Rocket Ishmael.
Kelly Tripucka, and then another basketball.
Oh, Kelly Tripucka. Yeah. First reference ever. The 12 years of doing this show, we got our first Kelly Tripucka reference. I love it, Farrell. That's good stuff.
I miss Kelly. But anyway, okay, now we're talking about these tight ends. This is a division.
Great bunch of tight ends.
But not in Denver. I just can't get out of Denver.
Yeah.
And now he goes to Seattle. And now he's, and you look at Noah Fant, and he passes all the eye tests, and you say, okay, 50 catches last year. When did he get them? I don't know. He had 8 or 9 games with 3 or less receptions. He was only targeted about 4 times a game. I adopted a couple of I adopted a couple of dynasty teams, and Fant was on the roster. And I said, well, obviously that's why the person let this team go. And I just can't wait to get him off the roster. And as soon as I do, I think, wow, what if he ever gets into his skill set? But your thoughts on Noah Fant?
Yeah, ditto. No other way to say it. He's got the pedigree, and that pedigree is the tight end U. Let's start there.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't Hawkinson and him drafted same year, number 1, both from Iowa?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That in itself is an anomaly that 2 guys from the same college come out as number 1s at tight end U. So, yeah, I think I think he's got everything, and I think what we open the show with is Njigba Smith and Jigba
Jackson.
Jackson. Yeah, the first round guy. He's going to help that, but the problem is it's a running team, and it's a 3-headed tight end locker.
Yes, it is.
And they're all good athletes. Doesn't mean they're all superstars, but
I think we should just say goodbye to Noah Fant. I just think for this show we should never bring him up again.
I'd say yes, except I'm going to go draft him right now in the 19th.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, there it is on the clock.
As I am on the clock. My second tight end in the 19th round, if that tells you anything. I think my first was maybe a round or 2 prior to that. I won't hold the show up to draft him, but that is I need a kicker and a tight end, and Noah Fant will be it. As my 2, I got who's my 1? That's the real question.
It's got to be like so. You're taking him in the 19th round, and your first tight end you just took in like the 16th or 17th.
First tight end I took. I better look at my draft board here.
This is compelling.
It is,
I'm very curious.
I just done so well in the FFPC without knowing the rules. It's so fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Rules. And you don't know them, you don't have to worry about them.
That's right. Yeah. The heck with it. Who needs a tight end? 18th round, I took Hayden Hurst.
So you got Hurst and Fant. Okay. All right.
So obviously I threw the position. And in fact, I took a defense, the Niners, in the 15th round, which is so abnormal. 3rd defense off the board in that. There's so many oddities in this early drafting. And those other 2 defenses went in the 14th round. So who knows?
So everybody was assuming it like Biplab Mandel and Jay Reed thought it was going to be Irv Smith was the first tight end you took, but it was actually Hayden Hurst.
Yeah.
I like the Hurst pick. Let's get a couple of emails here for you, Kurt. Paul in New York leads us off tonight. Are you all in on Roschon Johnson in Chicago, or do you think it is going to be a split backfield? Paul, thank you for the email. We certainly appreciate it. Roschon Johnson's getting a lot of steam in the FFPC rookie drafts. I know there's a lot of people talking him up, but Khalil Herbert's still there. You're still looking at Deontay Foreman in that backfield as well. How are you looking at the Chicago running backs this year, Kurt?
Yeah, he's probably the 4th best running back on that team, right behind the 2 you mentioned and the guy who gets the ball every play, Justin Fields. So not even on my radar. Those are guys that, if you hit on them, great. No qualms. I got no problem with somebody spending draft picks on them, but I just don't build my teams with rookie running backs who we don't even know if they can stop a blitz, let alone run the ball. So I'm hung up on the rookie stuff too much. You got to be special.
At that point, are you kind of looking at Khalil Herbert? Are you looking at Deontay Foreman as a pivot off Roschon Johnson when everybody else is taking them? You think that the value might be with those other 2 guys?
I think they're equal. It's a 2-headed monster, but the running back to have is Justin Fields. So if it's that if you got a heavy wide receiver build, I'd be happy with probably Herbert before Foreman, but I'd be content with Foreman as one of my 3. I would trying to find 2 running backs, one of my 3 in that kind of build.
We have a question from Harry in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Ironically, not about an Alabama Crimson Tide player, but it is about 2 SEC players. Hey, Kurt, are you team Wan'Dale Robinson or team Jalen Hyatt in 2023? That's Harry in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He says thanks. We say thank you to him for emailing in. Yeah, so Wan'Dale Robinson, a UK guy, right, Farrell? Am I remembering that correctly? Okay. Jalen Hyatt, a Tennessee guy, and now they're both real-life teammates. on the New York Giants. Which Giants receiver you're more likely to draft this year, Kurt, between those two?
Yeah, not even close for me. Again, it's a locker room. You've got an incumbent in there, and the incumbent wins. These guys just don't get to walk into the office and kick the incumbent out of their job. So it takes a bit of effort for these non-elite skill players to take over a position. They're filling the room. It's exactly the guy they need, but I have no desire to have him. Skilled athlete, but not on my radar. Not someone I'm drafting. Could he win somebody a league? Hell yeah. I mean, all these guys I'm not saying no to,
Right.
but just not guys I'm going to build a draft around. So
Wandale,
I like Wandale.
I'm looking at the ADP right now, and it's like how fast things turn. So Wandale Robinson Farrell, refresh my memory, and Kurt chime in on this. Was he a second round pick last year?
Yes, I believe so.
Early pick for sure. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so Robinson was a second round pick in the draft last year. He's going in the 14th round this year. Right now, Jalen Hyatt, who is fresh off being a third round pick this year, is going almost 2 full rounds ahead of Wandale Robinson. Hyatt going in the end of the 12th right now as wide receiver 57. This is the shiny new toy theory that I think a lot of FFPC Fantasy Pros drafters have right now. Farrell, I'm fresh out of emails. I'm going to tee you up for the final question for Mr. Kurt Anderson tonight.
The final question comes with disclaimers, Mr. Anderson. First of all players mentioned, good or bad, favorable or unfavorable, must have intact ACLs and have never spent a day on injured reserve due to an ACL injury. You also must be players that you have not previously referenced during the show. We're all about, with the last question, new material with the, because the Dizzle and Billy Hollywood and 3 or 4 other guys are still listening. So this is important that we get that out there. Here we go. Name me a player that you are really, really looking forward to getting on your team this year. And then name me a guy that you just really wouldn't. You wouldn't take him if they let you play with an extra player. He would not be. You just can't. You don't want him. You just won't do it.
I think it's Bijan. So he's healthy. My problem is the offense. The problem is the team. The problem is the people around him. It's not him. So I've had several 4, 5, 7, 9 slot picks, and I've contemplated it, and I just can't see myself doing it. I can't. So therefore, he's not going to be available in the second round to anybody out there. We know that. If he is, I'd be shocked. So be it. I wouldn't touch him until the third. So that's someone I wouldn't touch. I'd love to have him. I'm not going to get him. Just not going to be a part of it. I was actually going to answer the question, Brees Hall, but I when I was in the green room, I didn't get any disclaimer notifications. So this is really catching me off guard.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
So let me circle to the guy I want to get. And I think it's J.K. Dobbins. Who knows? But I wanted him to be good. He's just all that skill set. I'm not an Ohio State fan. I'm a skill set fan, and he seems to be that guy. Sans that bloody injury he had that has messed him up for a year and a half now. But I hope he's healthy, and that's the guy I'm targeting. And I don't know if I have him actually in that many leagues. It's all about builds. But that's the guy I think who's going to be a difference maker this year.
I agree.
And the other, it's not. It's Todd Monken taking over, but if he is going to throw the ball there much more so, and we have a email coming up with Zay Flowers, but obviously with Flowers and Beckham and Bateman and Andrews and everybody there, that is going to free up some running lanes for one J.K. Dobbins this year. And I like that. I think that's an interesting call with Dobbins this year, because you don't hear his helium has not elevated to the level that I think I was probably expecting it to. Now, maybe that changes over the course of the summer, but I think he's a guy that could be due for some positive ascension up the draft board. Dave Nowitzki in the chat right now. I did not forget about you. I said we were going to ask Kurt Anderson this question, and we're going to right now for our final question of the night. Dave Nowitzki wants to hear about Calvin Ridley. Kurt, I have him listed in the FFPC, or excuse me, the Fantasy Pros Championship data as wide receiver 18, going in the middle of the 4th round, right behind Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, and Amari Cooper, right ahead of Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, and DJ Moore. Your thoughts on Calvin Ridley, the newest Jaguar veteran receiver?
I hope he returns to who he was. It'd be good for football, be good for the Jaguars. He won't return to my lineup in the 4th round. I would rather have Kirk later. Ingram, you probably won't see me draft in mid-rounds. I'd like him, though. Nothing wrong with him. He's a great fit for that offense. If he is let's talk about recency bias. If he is the 2021 Calvin Ridley, they've got a 1st-round wide receiver.
Right.
I mean, a 1st-round fantasy wide receiver, which is, putting up highlights. So all for it. Would love to have him. I'd love to steal him in the 6th. Have yet to see him get there. It just doesn't happen.
Calvin Ridley, if I can find the stats on him, in 2020, 90 catches, 1,374 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Now, that was without guys, refresh your memory. Was Julio Jones on that team?
Yeah, Ryan and Julio. Yeah.
Okay.
Ryan and Julio.
All right. So the fact that he did that with Julio Jones, and granted, it was not Julio Jones at the peak of his powers, but a lot of people are saying I'm not on Ridley because he's going to be going, and there's a lot of reasons not to like Ridley this year, but some of the reasons are like, well, he's going to have to contend with Evan Ingram. He's going to have to contend with Christian Kirk. Travis Etienne is going to catch passes in that offense. This is not going to be, like what it was in Atlanta where it's just 2 guys. But he's done this before with an elite pass catcher. So I think that there is something to be said for Calvin Ridley. Now, whether you're on board with him as high as he's going, wide receiver 18 in the 4th round, that's a different discussion. But I think Ridley, and Farrell, I'll throw this to you real quick because I'm sure Dave wants to hear from you on this. I think Ridley is kind of a polarizing guy in the mid-4th round.
I do too, and I'm just a really, really big Christian Kirk fan. And I'm not going to go to battle with both these guys, so I'm going to look at Christian Kirk, maybe to my demise, but I believe in Christian Kirk. I think he plays with a chip on his shoulder, and Ridley's got to come back from it. So I'm siding with Kirk in this offense, but I'm rooting for Ridley.
There was an article that, and I'll reference what Dizzle had to say about this. Calvin Ridley he wrote an article in the Players Tribune about the whole gambling suspension and what he was going through, and there's some mental health stuff in there as well. So it wasn't just the gambling thing. There's some other stuff going on. And anybody who's kind of torn on drafting Calvin Ridley this year, go to thePlayersTribune.com, read it. It only takes 4 or 5 minutes to read. It's a good piece, as Dizzle is pointing out. And another good piece in the FFPC and the Fantasy Pros Championship this year is the incomparable Kurt Anderson, who we were very fortunate enough to get on the show tonight for a long time. My God, it's almost 11 o'clock. We're very thankful, Kurt, that you have made some time for us tonight. We wish you nothing but the best in all your leagues this year. Hopefully you're taking down that $1 million grand prize, and we'll have you back on in January to talk about it. But congrats on your previous success, and good luck in 2023, my friend.
Thanks, guys. Have a great summer. See you maybe in Vegas, Kentucky,
you got
or in January.
Yeah, or all of them. All of them.
That's
We'll do Kentucky, Vegas, and in January on these airwaves. Thank you, Kurt.
The way you're talking, Kurt.
That's right. Kurt Anderson, ladies and gentlemen, dropping by the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. I do apologize. We will not get a chance to get to all the emails because we went so long with Kurt. We had so many we had a great lively YouTube and Facebook chat tonight. Yeah, so a lot of great stuff.
Biplab said something about coming back. The player didn't get hurt, and he's right about that. But amongst players who talk about missing time, it's I don't know if it's a mental block. I don't know if it's just the erosion of skills or being away from the team, but that is one of the hardest things to do. You talk about a guy that misses a year, and previously you would miss a year because of talent. So you're not talking about the elite players in the league, which of course Ridley is, but just coming back after missing time is one of the toughest things to do.
Yeah.
So that's something he's got to overcome.
And that's one of the that's what's going to make him such a polarizing guy, because as we look forward to the fantasy football, like the meat of the drafting season, as I've been talking about all night tonight, if you get Ridley right this year, and like you draft him and he, plays like he never missed any time at all, man, you are going to be flying high throughout the season as long as he stays healthy. And if you avoid him and he hits, that's a miss. That's a miss on you. And that's, like, we always talk about these players every single year. There's always a certain number of players that are going to define the fantasy season. Calvin Ridley, definitely one of the top 10 players we'll be looking at as far as how he affects drafts this season, how he affects the $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event and the Fantasy Pros Championship. Farrell, you are a gentleman and a scholar. We will check out kffsc.com for all the drafts going on right now. Anything you want to promote specifically tonight?
No, I just like promoting everyone to keep coming in. The shows and guests are good. You're doing a great job putting guys together, Balky. We've got a lot of content that we have to fight. I mean, I just learned tonight that Dave Turp has his own show. And now with our handy Aiden, and it's just we got to come with it. And so
we're the coattails, my friend.
Yeah,
we're just riding the Turp train at this point.
I will just promote people joining us and having guests like we had tonight in Curry. It's fantastic. And I lined up the last of our top 5 finishers in the KFFSC. A gentleman by the name of Chuck Ewell and his playing partner John Baxter. They are headed to the FFPC for the first time. They won their bid as a top 5 finisher in the KFFSC. So that's something that I would like to promote. I don't know if all the FFPC players are aware of that, but in addition to the good times and the financial gain that you can win in Kentucky, you can also win another FFPC team. And that one that you win here will be the one that will win you the $1 million.
That's right. No question. It is a win-win-win-win proposition. Michael Scott said win-win-win on The Office. To draft in Kentucky and Louisville or in Cincinnati, it's a win-win-win-win. You cannot lose. It's so much fun. Farrell, we will continue to check out the KFFSC, kffsc.com, at KFFSC official on Twitter. Thank you, my friend, and we will do this again next Friday.
I'll see you.
Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, at KFFSC official on Twitter, and of course, KFFSC.com. I want to thank him. I want to thank Kurt Anderson, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you for watching or streaming or downloading this podcast. We return once again next Friday at 10/9 Central. We're going to have 10-time FFPC league winner Jared Eisenlohr is going to be our guest. It's going to be a lot of fun talking Fantasy Pros drafts with him, the FFPC Best Ball Tournament as well. We're going to get into a lot of great stuff with Jared next week. If you missed last night's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, have no fear. Go on the FFPC YouTube channel, the FFPC Twitter, FFPC Facebook. The full show is there. We had Fantasy Pros Thor Nystrom, and we had Destination Debbie, Dynasty Trades in 5, and Dynasty League Football, Scott Connor, a guy who plays in a ton of FFPC and KFFSC leagues. He hosted the second hour with me. We had Thor on for the first hour. It was a tremendous show. I loved it. I learned so much. That's the most important part, is I had fun and I learned, right? What more can you ask in life than that? So FFPC Fantasy on YouTube, FFPC on Twitter, Fantasy Football Players Championship on Facebook, in case you missed that. You can win. Oh, and by the way, on the Better Sports Network High Stakes Fantasy Football Show next Thursday night at 7/6 Central live, we're going to have Tom Strachan from Fantasy Pros live from the United Kingdom. What's great about that is it's going to be like 2 a.m. for Tom when he's doing the show. And I'm very excited to do a show where he is talking fantasy football in his thick English, Cockney British accent. I don't know which one it is. I'll ask him about it next Thursday at 2 a.m. when he is he's heavily caffeinated. But it is the middle of the night there. It's going to be a fun show. I've never done a podcast like that before. Tom Strachan on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show next week. Win $1 million in the inaugural Fantasy Pros Championship right now. It's just a $350 entry fee at myffpc.com. Register by June 1st, and you will get a free $35 FFPC league credit immediately credited to your account as long as you draft before June 15th. You can do that up to 3 times, so that's over $100 in free FFPC teams. Register for Dynasty Startup Drafts. You get a ton of them popping off tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. A lot of drafts starting at the $100 level, going up all the way to the $5,000 level. If you have a price point in mind, we have the league for you at myffpc.com. We've been doing Dynasty for nearly a decade. More than 1,200 teams. Nary a league has folded. So you are in it for the long haul. You don't have to worry about your leagues folding over at myffpc.com. $1 million grand prize in the main event once again this year. Register before by May 31st so you can get in that 2023 FFPC Pros versus Joes drawing. That's going to be a lot of fun as well. Hopefully you can register for the main event, get your name picked, and then we'll cover your draft live here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Myself, Farrell, and a lot of the other industry pros and some of the other FFPC Joes will be part of those broadcasts coming up at the end of July. $200,000 is the grand prize in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament. $50,000 grand prize is what you're searching for when you plunk down $35, just $35 in the Superflex FFPC Best Ball Tournament as well. And if you want to play in a closed 12-team league, we have a ton of price points available for you, including as low as $5 at myffpc.com. You want to draft slow, live, sit and go, whatever you want. It's all at myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share the video with your friends and enemies and frenemies, and get notified every time we go live. Once again, we will be going live on this FFPC YouTube channel Sunday night. Aiden LaCorey and Dave Terpoli will have live coverage of a FFPC $200,000 best ball draft. That is coming up on Sunday night. Register for those Fantasy Pros drafts. I'm commissioning the midnight draft for anybody who's interested. That's popping off in a little bit less than an hour. So hopefully you can sign up for that and win $1 million maybe tonight at myffpc.com. Thanks for watching, everybody. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
I wish I had something better to go off the air with tonight, and I ask for forgiveness. I don't think I did one of these goodbyes last week when Aiden and I did live coverage of the FFPC Genesis and Revelations drafts. I will dedicate this to a guy who was not in the chat room tonight, and that was Hudson Kern-Reeve, the biggest Marvel fan I know, who also plays FFPC. I saw Guardians of the Galaxy this past week. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Obviously, Volume 2 came out like 6 years ago, so it's been a while since we got the continuation. Chef's kiss on how they ended it. I loved it. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the characters, some, not all, probably, going forward in a lot of Marvel movies. So if you're a fan of the Marvel movies, I think they did Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 correctly. Get out there and see it. And if you're not looking to see a movie, tonight, Saturday night, Sunday night, whatever it is, we have plenty of drafts at myffpc.com. Don't forget kffsc.com for all the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship drafts as well. Thanks for watching, everybody, or listening, downloading, streaming, what have you. We will be back live next Friday at 10/9 Central with 10-time FFPC league winner Jared Eisenlohr, myself, and of course, Farrell Elliott. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you then.